What's up, guys? This is Werner von Wallenrod, and today I'm going to talk to you about my entire Kid Rock collection. Okay, and it starts off with this CD single here, Back from the Dead. Now, as the title kind of naturally implies, this is not Kid Rock's first release. He had an album before this in 1990 on Giant Records, and he had a single, but I just wasn't really kind of feeling it. I mean, the production was okay, it's a little more rudimentary than here, but still, alright for an independent release. But just really wasn't feeling Kid Rock at that point. He was pretty kind of juvenile, the rhymes were pretty basic. Like the single is sort of a tacky kind of sex rap. I'm nothing against sex raps, I've got plenty in my collection, but really once you kind of got the gimmick of the title and what that was about, that was sort of the whole novelty of the song gone away. Once you sort of got that, it's over. I mean, I guess it was sort of geared towards young kids who would, who shouldn't be listening to it, but so anyway, so I wasn't really digging that. And that was in 1990. In 1992 he came back. He had been dropped from Giant Records. He came out on Continuum Records. This was the first single, Back from the Dead, and this I think is actually really pretty tight and his strongest work. Now, Kid Rock later, and the Kid Rock you're probably most familiar with, is very rock and roll. Guitars and rock and, just rock and roll stuff. This is much more hip-hop. It's not really his most hip-hop, and I guess I would say his first album is probably a little slightly more pure hip-hop than his second album. The second album, The Polyfuse Method, which this is from, is already bringing in more rock and roll elements, but this is still pretty damn hip-hop, especially this particular single. And I just really like the production here. MCing-wise, too, Kid Rock kind of comes off pretty well. I would say this is one of his stronger tracks. He kind of comes off aggressive, kind of hardcore, but still sort of light and, at the same time, a little bit definitely Beastie's influence, a lot of, bringing across his attitude and stuff, but not so much as like he did in the first album and some other tracks. This is more of a straight hip-hop on hardcore. He's kind of angry, he's got some nasty stuff to say about Giant Records and sort of about the Detroit scene. I mean, not that he's really dissing other MCs or anything, but he does sort of say, I think he says Detroit's a wasteland, so he's just the best in the whole Midwest or something like that. But whatever, I mean, it's a pretty tight track, but the instrumental especially, I think, is really tight. And it's all by Kid Rock. I mean, as the credits say, beats, loops, scratches, everything is entirely by him. And yeah, scratches. He actually does some nice scratches on here. There's not a lot of it, but it's pretty nicely mixed into the track and well done. And, unexpected from Kid Rock. The only other credit here is D Square did the instrumental, and which is to say the instrumental version, not the instrumental to the song. And really, I don't know how much D Square must have done there, because it's basically, there's no difference besides just taking off the vocals. There must be some slight differences in there, but I really don't catch them, so they're really very subtle. One thing that really comes across in this track for me, too, is it's really very Detroit. I mean, Detroit's #1 rapper, obviously Kid Rock is from Detroit, but there's just a real Detroit feel to it, much more so than even his other material. For example, like the way he kind of uses, like, electric guitar samples and kind of loops, but puts them over more sort of sparse traditional breakbeats. Kind of really reminds me of like what Esham did on the Judgment Night stuff. And even, I mean, it's not, when you think, okay, what is Detroit hip-hop known for? You wouldn't necessarily think of a track like this. But conversely, when you listen to this track, it's like pure Detroit, and in a good way. I mean, I really kind of like it captures the feel of the place. And here, unlike anywhere else, Kid Rock really feels like he's representing Detroit and bringing that out. And this track in general is just really dope. I mean, he uses some familiar elements, a lot of familiar breakbeats, like the bass line and everything is from Third Bass's Step Into the AM, and then he kind of subtly mixes it in, though, and the way he combines them with other elements that you haven't heard before. Sometimes for more substantial breaks and stuff, sometimes just little quick snippets and cuts. Like he kind of brings in a brief refrain from Ugly People Be Quiet and all, so it just sounds really dope. And again, that's all Kid Rock, and Kid Rock sounds good on here. Now, this CD single, which I guess is pretty rare, I've never seen it anywhere else since. I got this way back in the day. And yet this, by the way, there's no front cover. That's the way it's made. I didn't lose the front cover. I actually bought this shrink-wrapped, and this is the way it came. Back in the days, sometimes CD singles were like that. So anyway, it's just got the 3 tracks. Interestingly, the radio long, the radio short, and the instrumental. So there's only clean versions. But honestly, to me, that's fine. Not because he doesn't curse on here. He does, and they censor it. But the way they do it actually kind of works with the track. I mean, they kind of, it's nothing special or unique. You've heard it before. They're just going to put the scratching sounds over the curses. But it actually kind of meshes and adds to the track. Now, this might sort of sound like I'm kind of justifying having only the radio version, and I could sort of see that. I could see the case being made for that, and I could believe that. But no, really, I do think I prefer this version. I have heard the uncensored version, but I think just having those kind of cuts in there as opposed to the regular words, I mean, you know, I'm saying Kid Rock came off pretty well in the single, but he's not like, you know, fucking Melle Mel or Kool G Rap. This is not a lyrical essay of magnificence, so I'm fine with tampering it with it a little bit and putting in the scratches and that kind of sound. It's not really scratches, but that kind of sound into the track just adds a little bit more energy and a little bit more hypeness than you get just from Kid Rock spitting. And because when he does curse, frankly, they're usually the weakest lines in the track, so you're not really spoiling much. So it's sort of the most basic, obvious points he's going to make, and you know what he's saying anyways. The case, I guess, with most edited tracks. So you really don't feel like you're losing anything here. If anything, again, I actually like it slightly better. Now, so when I got this was a blind buy for me. I hadn't heard it before. I just saw it in the stores. It was cheap. I picked it up. Kid Rock, like I said, I knew who he was. I was familiar with the first album. He was on my radar. I just wasn't feeling the album enough to get it. So when I saw this Back from the Dead, I was thinking, oh, I'm hoping for more of a hardcore, rougher, you know, not necessarily like gangster hardcore, but just a little more straight, pure hip-hop kind of stuff, a little bit more. Basically what this is. This was everything I was kind of hoping it would be. So very pleased with this. Then I heard his next single in 1993, and that was just corny as hell and pretty awful. The rapping was really cheesy. There's a video for it, and it looked really like just pure corny marketing, like they wanted to make him the next Marky Mark or Jesse White or something. It's just a mess. The single was bad. I mean, there's maybe some okay horn samples in the track or something, but basically it was junk. And so I didn't mess with that. I didn't mess with his later stuff. He went into more, you know, obviously pure rock and roll. He basically kept getting further and further away from hip hop and more, you know, rock and roll. So, you know, I was hoping he would mature here, and he kind of did. And to be fair, I mean, he continues to record to this day. He makes album after album after album, and possibly in rock and roll, he's continued to mature as an artist even more. When he first came out, you know, his stage shows were very gimmicky and novelty kind of stuff, and sort of Attitude and Bled and Kid Rock, and I mean, I don't know, whatever. So maybe his newer stuff is better and more mature. I don't know, and I don't care, because it's rock and roll, but this is at least more than the last single. So anyway, if you haven't caught on by now, this also is my entire Kid Rock collection. When I talk about my entire Kid Rock collection, this is it. This is all I have. This is all I listen to. I don't want any more than that, but I also don't want any less, because I do actually like this single, and I'm glad to own it, and every so often I do go back and revisit it and enjoy it when I do. Okay, I do also technically own this as well. I got this because Eminem is on it, and this was back sort of when Eminem appearances were few and far between, kind of sought after. I listened to this album all the way through, I think, once, and that was it, and kind of put it away. Went back and listened to the Eminem track like maybe one or two other times, but basically, you know, technically, this is the rest of my Kid Rock collection. Now, this clip might not really give you the full experience of the song. Like I said, one of the things about the song that works is that sort of the changing elements, the different breaks and elements that come throughout. Also, this song takes a bit to get started. You got a bunch of sort of different guitar riffs and metal guitar kind of stuff. And I'm not against heavy metal guitars or guitar riffs in hip-hop or anything. There's some examples where it's been done really well. It just hasn't been done particularly well in this track. It just sort of comes off as kind of busy and noisy, as opposed to really, you know, the real... Well, it gets funkier and fresher later on when the more serious bass line and breaks come in. So I think you'll like this clip. I think it's good, but I think if you like it, then you should go on and track down the full entire song, you know, give it a proper listen, then you'll get a more richer appreciation of the song in its entirety. But for now, here is the clip, Back from the Dead, the long radio edit. Both versions have a long intro, so go with the long one.
Tennis. Say here we go now. Say here we go now. Say here we go now.
Hayden Full Rugby.
Say here we go now.
It's a rare sight. Blacks and whites dancing together, dining together.
This is okay. step into the AM stuff.
Turn back, get some air walk jimmies. Never slacking, girls I be macking. Not whacked, I don't try to act black when I came up, I came extra from the outskirts. Bag of Chiba in the pocket with my sweatshirt. Bone to the bone, to the bag, to the bag, to the bone. Hey, on this now microphone. Hit bound from the Motown, Aaron. I'm 40, I drink it by the gallon. And you don't stop. And you don't stop. And you don't stop.
Tell me where you got started, baby.
I started out in Mount Clemens as a DJ. Parties getting drunk on a Sunday.
That was a clip of it, but if you really listen to the full song, you'll probably appreciate it even more. I recommend it. If you like that kind of grimy, hard, early 90s Detroit sound, I mean, this is it. This is it in spades. This is really, you know, if you appreciate that era, you like that sound, bam. And it can be found, well, maybe not the CD single. I've never seen this, again, anywhere online or anything. This might be pretty rare, but the 12-inch is very easy to find and find it super cheap. And the 12-inch also includes the acapella, which is not here. So I recommend this. I don't necessarily recommend anything else from Kid Rock, although, I mean, there was a few moments on Polyfuse, and, you know, the first album isn't terrible necessarily, but if you're not into the whole rock and roll stuff, and you're familiar with Kid Rock, and you don't like Kid Rock, maybe even hate Kid Rock, look, I'm with you. I don't hate him, but I'm not into him. I'm not feeling him. So even if you're like, you just saw the video, the title of this video, and you're coming out like, screw Kid Rock and totally dismissive of him, I say give the single a chance. This is actually pretty tight. And again, you can get it super cheap, and it's worth it. So I recommend it. Back from the Dead, 1990, Continuum Records, Kid Rock. Till next time, this is Werner von Wallenrod. Peace out. Meh.